I have no better model of how to be a manager and a coach than Steve Ward.
We want to make deals. We want to do deals. But you have to control that aggression. And I think Corey's done a good job at being a conduit between us, you.
It was like Bob Nackle and I. We were the exact same person. We both grew up super modestly, wanted the same thing, wanted to make money, wanted to succeed, competitive athletes. Like, he's a crazy good athlete. But then we diverged because of our personalities, which ended up being a blessing. The secret is you're going to be a success at the end of the journey.
Right.
Not going to be an overnight success. Most people aren't. But if you're having a great time on the journey.
Listen, all you New Yorkers.
All right, Paul Massey, welcome to the Broker Brunch.
Thank you.
My godfather.
You made this?
Cheers, guys.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
Thanks for coming in on Saturday.
A nice way to have a brunch.
Yeah, cheers. So Paul shows up this morning, 2 fingers bandaged up, says he bust them up.
No, I just jammed this into Italo, who's my jiu-jitsu guy, so you know, because he interns here. Yeah, I think I busted him. We got him on the side of the head, and my finger broke instead of his head. But at first I thought, oh, this is going to hurt for a little while. Then it was clearly broken.
Yeah, that thing is shaking, yeah.
Yeah, it's not good.
Part of the basic training, every broker should do it.
I bet you felt like doing that a lot with us starting out.
I love it. I do it in the middle of the day, as you know, and like, it wouldn't matter what kind of morning you had, you come back and you're all showered up and fresh and you're like completely re-energized. And if I didn't work out, 3 or 4 times a week, I think I'd crack up.
You used to do boxing before, right?
Yeah. I switch every once in a while, whatever. Mostly out of inertia, I let it happen to me. I never, like, I did Taekwondo, karate for a long time, and the instructor retired, so I'm like, okay, change up. And I went boxed, and COVID got the boxing gym guy, and so that padlocked the gym. And then when I came back from the real lockdown of COVID, a kid walked in here with jiu-jitsu on his resume. And I wrestled in school, so I always thought, everyone always said, it's not quite like wrestling, but it's a lot like wrestling. So I always wanted to do it. And the kid said, there's this gym on 14th and 7th, and there's 8 world champions working out of that place, and it's a really well thought of, and the culture is really good. No assholes,
Yeah.
And I went down there, and I walked in, dirty, smelly, just jiu-jitsu, and I'm like, this is the place. This is it's exactly what every good, place that I've ever hung out. And then it becomes a social aspect of it too.
Yeah.
Like for years, and you get respect because like old guy keeps showing up and they like that. And you just make friends, but the friends are up and down the food chain. There's no it's not necessarily who I'd hang out with. And so it just becomes social too, which is awesome.
Is there a mental component to the jiu-jitsu that is...
Everyone always says this mental stuff about like any martial art type thing. It's nothing more than any sport where you actually are improving every year and you're getting good at it and you clear your head out. Like, you can't be thinking about, what sale you're negotiating when someone's swinging at you or trying to, tie you up or something.
So there's a meditative or meditation type of...
Just like any sport.
Something that you can just completely let go and concentrate on something else.
Especially with karate, people like, oh, there's a mystical side to it. Total bullshit.
Yeah.
And by the way, my karate instructor, Master Cho, back in the day was like the man.
Mm-hmm.
He used to fight Bruce Lee in Madison Square Garden, and Chuck Norris and all these old names. He completely hated anyone talking about the mystical, BS. He viewed it as a great sport. And that's what it is. That's what all these things are. Like Equinox for me, where are you going with that? I don't, like, I know it's good that people work out, but like, to what end? And what are you really building there? So I could never, I wonder about health clubs because of that. And I think they're like, their formula is, let's get all the money in January with all the New Year's resolutions, and then no one ever shows up. There must be. It's like, It's like the Epic Ski Pass map, right? They must have a formula where the average person only skis 3 days a week, 3 days a year.
100%.
It's so important to have something that can clear your head and give yourself mental clarity. I struggled a bit with that actually. But
Do you guys work out now?
we'll go for a run in the morning.
You can't tell?
Run? Well, of course you look great.
I
I
run.
just figure that's your age.
I run. I like to read. One of my goals for the year is to learn to play chess. I read somewhere that a lot of people just within a work.
I'll play chess with you. I was really into it as a kid. I went to tournaments. Yeah, but it's been a while. But like I'd play a couple of games.
Let's get a game of chess going.
Yeah, and the reading, I read a lot in the summer because I click it down a little bit, spend more time at the beach. And I used to thought, you're a salesman, you shouldn't like reading, but I think a lot of people do.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of people think you watch TV or whatever to relax your mind, but it doesn't relax your mind at all. Actually, something like reading that's keeping your mind active is a better chance of sort of.
Active rest.
Yeah, exactly.
What kind of books do you like?
A lot of psychology, a lot of initially a lot of self-help, some sort of business thing, but also recently I've started reading like novels. Reading one at the moment actually, it's called The Soul Path. It's about this couple in England actually that go on this long walk down the south coast, and it talks about their journey getting to their destination with their money, that sort of thing.
That's probably like watching it like a TV show a little bit, right? It's a little bit less taxing.
Exactly, on their brain. And I joined a book club about a year ago, and a bit intimidated at the start because some of the people there were like neurosurgeon. One of them was neurosurgeon, one of them was like a politics. I don't know. I want to be in. Did have this conversation with these people, but
They put on their pants just like you. Hey.
Yeah, and they probably think this guy's a big shot real estate pro with a fancy accent, right? They're intimidated by
Very, very. You guys are lucky to have those accents. Probably have been your whole life, if you know what I mean.
We don't know how to talk any other way. It's definitely been a benefit in New York.
Yeah. That's what I meant.
So you're into the jiu-jitsu because of the wrestling. Where do you see the jiu-jitsu going? Do you have any grand like goals for it, or is it something you're just...
We're into it because, no offense to anyone in the Taekwondo land, I think your handwork's lacking in Taekwondo. You know, and your grappling, there isn't any as much. So I always thought it would be a nice compliment. The Taekwondo workout is amazing because it tones you up and everything. But I'm gonna enter a tournament in June, my first locally, and compete. I'm a white belt. So I'm a third-degree black belt Taekwondo, and I'm a white belt Jiu-Jitsu, and it's very disconcerting.
Explain the belts to me. I have no idea.
It goes white, blue, purple, black. Every kind of martial art has different color schemes, but mostly black is where you go into black belt. Like Italo, the kid who interns here, is a black belt.
He's a black belt.
Yeah. What's cool is, you know how like those Tiger Schulman schools where you basically are buying belts? Every 6 months you can buy a new belt.
Yeah.
The guy I did Taekwondo with, and Murillo Santander, who runs Unity Gym, that jiu-jitsu place in New York, if you ask for a promotion, you're dead.
Really?
Like, you'll wait another year.
oh really?
Oh,
Love it.
that's what you want.
He has to tap you on the shoulder, or, the real guys, they have to tap you on the shoulder. You never dare ask for promotion.
Oh wow, that's
Never. Which means by the time you're getting the promotion, you think you've deserved it for a year. And so you really feel confident that you earned it. But the real schools don't sell belts.
That's interesting. You should check Italo on Instagram. It's pretty impressive. Have you seen his page?
I haven't, but
Paulo Moura, Moura. You can Google him. He's third in the world in his weight class. This is the intern.
so I was going to say I haven't seen that, but I'm very impressed by what I've seen by Italo. So Italo sits in the middle of the bullpen. He comes in every morning. He's got a suit. He looks sharp, and he's got probably 2 feet high of books on his desk, and he comes around and he asks us all questions. He's like, "Why did you ask that? Why did you say that?" Because he's hearing us on the phone, and then I just think that's really impressive. But it's not surprising to hear he's a black belt. That discipline is ingrained in him.
Yeah, he grew up. First of all, he grew up on the mean streets of Sao Paulo, which is where Murillo gets a lot of these kids. He'll find them in the old gym that he used to hang out with and drags them up here. They sleep on a bean bag in the gym for the first few months before they can afford to go get an apartment, which of course is a modest apartment.
Yeah.
And then they start getting sponsors, like uniform companies will start paying them to wear their uniform, and they get appearance fees for showing up at tournaments. So Italo is a professional jiu-jitsu guy.
Wow.
Where he's making a living doing this and teaching guys like me.
That's awesome.
Do you see, so you talk about, you never ask for a promotion, you never ask for the black belt. Is that something that, resonates with you from a business standpoint in terms of, listen, when you're due something, and there's no point in talking about it before then?
Well, I believe in rational behavior, right? If someone sees that you're ready to be promoted or ready to move on or ready to take more responsibility, they'll do what's in their own selfish best interest for themselves and the company, which is to promote you. So, yeah, I think I love the never ask. Like, I've been a leader. I've ended up a leader, and my humility is completely intact, so don't think I'm getting my head blown up. But I've ended up the leader of a lot of organizations that I've been involved with, never asking for it. It's really against my nature to ask, and way more satisfying if you're asked. So, like, every non-for-profit, you end up the board chair, the sports teams, you're the captain. That's why politics, I liked politics, but it's a little rough because you really have to ask for the order. And that was uncomfortable. Yeah, I'd rather just be heralded in on a big throne and say, you're the mayor of New York.
Yeah.
You didn't even ask for it.
Right. It was just pure merit.
That's
No, it's not the way it works, unfortunately. But so it's like you have to be in it for the right reasons, is what I'm hearing there. You can't go into leadership saying I want to be a leader. It's more of you have
whatever you're doing has to be your passion. That's exactly right. Yeah, and which is you guys have that. You guys, I mean, Midge came in for his interview and he's like, I want to be in the Bronx.
Yeah,
he's our Bronx, one of our Bronx stars, and he was passionate about the Bronx. He had read about it, he had studied it, and I completely agreed with his thesis that it was half price compared to the other boroughs. So I thought it was great, but you get the passion.
Yeah, but there was no use telling Mitch that
it's got to come from within.
It has to come from him.
What's the analogy? You don't go up to a fighter in the gym and ask them to box. They've got to come to you, right? So they've got to have it within.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, talking about leadership, because I suppose that's the topic of today's podcast. Do you think like leaders and salesmen are like born or they made? Do you feel like there's certain natural leadership qualities you had as a young man? Or
that's good. It gets back to what I don't think, like, people walk in here, right, and and we have territories that we're dying to fill, good territories.
Mm-hmm.
But we're always trying to think, can we steer that person to downtown Brooklyn? It has to come from them. However they were dropped on their head as a kid, whatever it is, they have to be into what we do. They have to be in the geography that they commit to. And it's just got to be the person's idea. You can't talk anybody into almost anything, okay? Can't talk people into being motivated to sell, right? I mean, that's the thing we wrestle with all the time.
Yeah.
But when they are, you're going to transact. So, yeah, I think you can just nudge people. That's what managers do, is nudging. And like, it was like Bob Nackle and I, like, we were the exact same person. We both grew up super modestly, wanted the same thing, wanted to make money, wanted to succeed, competitive athletes. Like, he's a crazy good athlete. But then we diverged because of our personalities, which ended up being a blessing, because I liked the day-to-day of running that business, and he liked not being burdened with it and just being a great salesman. So that was a great combo. I viewed what the management side of it is. Couple things. We're servant leaders. No one in V6 gets a whiff of us thinking that you work for us, right? There's not a whiff of that around here. And in fact, some managers who have been here, we didn't quite get that,
Didn't work out.
Didn't click. Yeah. And so the servant leader thing's big. And then you thinking you're making someone's career, that's a complete myth. I'm not with you in the Bronx, 40 hours a week, which is half of the time that you spend working. But like, I'm not there with you every day. So you're making it. I'm not making it. But if I can nudge and push and cajole, I had the best coach in my life. This guy in my high school, Steve Ward, National Hall of Fame wrestling coach, winningest high school wrestling coach, literally National Hall of Fame, winningest high school wrestling coach ever. And he busted chops. That was his style. He'd make fun of you. He'd tease you, sometimes to the point of being irritating. But that was his thing. And he said, you got to treat everyone fairly, but you have to treat everyone differently because they're all different. Mm-hmm. I have no better model of how to be a manager and a coach than Steve Ward. And
it's interesting you say that, because a lot of people thank their career to Massey Knuckle. They rode that wave.
It's interesting. I hear that. I think they look back and they were really happy.
Yeah.
And I think that's what they thank people for.
Yeah.
And they all did well because we had the right attitude about managing them, and they were competitive and they fit in. And I feel the same way here. I know you guys, I feel bad about two things. I feel bad you really haven't seen a good market, and that's amazing to me. And I think you're about to, because the good market really, once you get a taste of that, you'll be at this forever.
Yeah.
Until then, and the other thing I feel bad about is, it has been a grind. So, but when the velocity kicks up, which it definitely will, the company is going to grow at a pace that will be exciting for you, and the support will be anything you need it to be. And anyway, we didn't get into that, but
well, that's good to know.
Yeah, I've had the time of my life in a down market, so I'm excited to know what it's like in a good
I know. Like that kid, Aaron, who was helping Andy with the
Aaron Burns.
Yeah, the Rockville Center property. I think it was Rockville Center, where it signed a contract in 3 weeks, and they had bidding war on this. Sorry, it was a small office building that happened to be in a sub-market where there's a lot of liquidity and a lot of entrepreneurial money chasing property. It's a very small sub-market.
Well, yeah.
He was like, it's signed in 3 weeks. I go, there is a market ahead of you where that happens every time and every week, and just you wait. That's what hit me about when I heard that. I started reflecting on what your experiences.
That reminds me of a story where in one of our sales meetings a few months back, one of the guys brought up, it was like, we priced the building at $5 million, but what do we do? We're after getting an offer at $5 million.
So you don't understand.
And Paul was like, well, that's what happens half of the time. It was like, we didn't know how to handle that. It was like, what do we tell the owner? And but obviously that's something you should be excited about, and that's something that does happen, and it's not something that we should be shy away from. Like, this is the greatest city. We work in the greatest market. Yeah. I think it's not beyond the realm of possibility that we break records. We do better than we thought we would do. I mean, there's liquidity here that probably isn't anywhere else, or maybe very few cities around the world.
Think about this: 3,000 sales a year on average. If you look over the past 15 years, in the height of the market, there's 4,500 sales. So literally 3 times as many sales as are happening now. Mm-hmm. So every one of your listings will move, mostly, and you'll have many more listings than you used to. It's coming.
One thing you mentioned there, you just mentioned about growing up, humble beginnings. Maybe you had to work hard. What was it like? You're a Boston guy, we know that, right? So
yeah,
where would you compare it to in New York?
Like, I think we kind of lived in Queens. Queens was some neighborhood in Queens.
Blue collar,
yeah,
hardworking people.
Yeah, I viewed the humble beginnings. My dad had a good job, but like we didn't know, we didn't know it was that humble.
Maybe it wasn't. Did I mislabel it?
No. I say it all the time.
Yeah,
so it is. I feel like there's a blessing in that, and that everything you get, you're lucky, and you pinch yourself.
Yeah,
like I'd rather be in that boat than the other.
Right.
Because how have you remained humble after all the success?
Because I think everyone would agree you're very humble. I think if you lose your humility, it's like that's a character flaw. I had this roommate in college, Jeff Edison, who runs a mall company, Phillips Edison.
Yeah.
And his family, you know, they were pretty well off. His father owned a big commercial leasing company. They had the biggest road building company in Michigan at one point. They used to make fun of people who spent money and showed up their money. And they just lived very modestly. But I always looked at that. And then Jeff could have kicked back and been, you know, just modest guy and not, you know, not really tried that hard. But he was like top of our class at Colgate, captain of the wrestling team, Harvard Business School, right out of the box, straight away from college. And I don't know what it is, but I learned a lesson from that Midwestern attitude that nobody wants. Another guy like that is Rick Clark. He's the most humble. It's Brookfield, chairman of Brookfield. Yeah, I mean, he is patently humble. And if you just, you know, people like that do a lot better.
Yeah, yeah. Because if you start at the top, I imagine it's very difficult. Like if you're born into money, it's almost like there's more downside than upside as to what lies ahead of you. I don't want to say that for everyone, but for me personally, thinking about it, it's nice to know that you can go and swing for the fences without.
I think there's a propensity for people who grew up poor to well, you never know. I think it's all over the map, but it's enjoyable to appreciate what you have.
I've heard a saying that people who were born without money and do well and are successful, they're constantly paranoid in the back of their mind about losing it all again. Do you think that's true?
No. I think they're probably protective and careful, but no, I don't think so. I think it's probably more that they're hyper competitive and they continue to be hyper competitive and they just can't be any other way. So they like winning, and the more they're winning, the bigger it is and the more the stakes are. But yeah,
maybe it's a story they tell themselves that they might lose it just to keep them going, like the competitive edge.
I don't think that's what drives people. Not fear. And no.
You always seem like someone who wants to come from a place of positivity, optimism. You know,
it's a choice. Yeah, isn't it a choice? I walk around and people come up to me and they, how are you today? And I say, great. And a lot of people say, you always say you're great. And I go, no, I don't actually. If I really am not perfectly great, I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to tell you why too. I mean, I hate conversations where, how are you? How's everything? You go to networking events, right? How's everything? Business is great. Great. Yeah, great. You never really saying anything to anyone. I hate those conversations. I hate conversations about the weather. No offense to anyone else about this. I hate sports. It's just so freaking boring talking about
generic, right?
It's a default, right? You might actually be a crazy Mets fan or a crazy Yankee fan, and you might actually like talking about that. But I think a lot of people just talk about it because it's something that they can default to. So I'll just go right at, how are you? And how's your family? Any good vacations lately? What are you doing this summer? Like, get into a real conversation. Where do you live? How long you been there? Where'd you grow up? Like, go deep. Go deep. Not deep weird, but like
yeah.
Deep, like, and it really helps because if you go to one networking event a week, 50 times a year, and you go have a real conversation with somebody, some different person, those people will feel connected to you for a long time.
Yeah.
At least 2 or 3 years, and they'll remember the conversation. And it's much more interesting because sometimes you really uncover some cool stuff. But then you become a networking monster because over 20 years, you've had 1,000 people you've personally connected with. And you know what that does for you. That's a great thing. And you have a lot of friends, and it's a much more interesting life. But I think no superficial conversations, I can't stand them.
And that emotional intelligence, which obviously you have, is that something you've like consciously developed over time? It's sort of improved over time, or?
Well, yes, in the sense that you figure out what works, right? I do know that I have a good network now. I mean, the business that I bring into the company, which I think, by the way, a CEO should be a business generator, is all from those people. Like, I do not prospect the territory anymore, even though that wouldn't be a bad thing, because that's how you launch yourself. So it's critical early on. But like, I really feel good about the fact that the phone rings at least a couple times a week with a live seller.
Mm-hmm.
And I love, working on that stuff with you guys. And that's the basis of years of being out there.
Yeah.
But it's just, it gets back to the thing we were talking about. You end up being a black belt because you keep showing up at the gym. Like, showing up, that's a thing, right? Just show up.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a lot more magic to it than 7 to 7. Bob Knackle always says, work half a day. Just ask yourself which 12 hours you're working.
Yeah. That's right.
I see his picture right over there on the wall.
How is
He's a baseball man.
How is Bob? I know you're probably like brothers for life after what you've been through, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. He's great. Now let me give you the real answer. He's good. We're best friends. He went through a rough patch. I think the didn't settle in exactly at Cushman. That's no trade secret.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff going on at JLL with mergers. I think he's settled in really well now, and he's also glommed onto the opportunity that is social media. Excuse me. And so I think the story is, I think what he told me was that he was walking down Madison Avenue. One of his clients came up to him and said, "How's everything at Cushman & Wakefield?" And he was crestfallen. He goes, "I'm not at Cushman & Wakefield. I'm at JLL." And the guy looks at him and says, "Well, you have no social media strategy, so I'm not surprised that I didn't know that."
Wow.
And
Shots fired.
Bob, like, when he hears something that lights a light bulb for him, he goes for it big time. Big time.
He's been all over, hasn't he?
Yeah.
I think we
Insta, Twitter, LinkedIn, and it's good stuff. And he's gone down memory lane too, which I think is a good strategy for him, but it's also not doing me.
Yeah,
Storytelling.
right, because his
Storytelling. It's Dale Carnegie,
absolutely, and it's interesting stories because I think everyone looks to Massey Knackle. All right, so you changed how it was done in New York City, right? You changed real estate here forever, and it was everyone wants to know the secret sauce behind a successful product, and I think by Bob sharing those, this was Massey Knackle. What does he say? What I learned after 26 years and whatever days of being in Massey Knackle. But if he applies that same intensity and consistency to his business, like, it's no wonder that he is where he is. Like the rest of us, we might put together a report or give a thought and say, I'm going to do this once a week or twice a week. But everywhere I go now, it's like, and kudos to him, it's Bob Knackle is on Instagram, LinkedIn. There's a new thought, a new way of looking at something. He's just 1, 2, 3 everywhere.
The secret is embracing. It's not the end. It's the journey. Like the end, you're gonna be an overnight success if you're enjoying the journey. I take that back. You're gonna be a success at the end of the journey.
Right.
Not gonna be an overnight success. Most people aren't. But if you're having a great time on the journey, I think it was interesting. Massey Knackle did not grow for the first 10 or even 12 years until we got sick of not growing finally. Almost sold the company to a competitor, Marcus. That the multiples changed. They were trying to go public, so the deal didn't happen. But that did us a good favor because it made us say, okay, we were selling the company out of frustration about not growing. Why don't we just stop talking and start doing something about it? So...
and that was 10 years in.
It was 12 years in. We went 88 to 2000. That was 2000. So it was 12 years. But what we were doing is saying every year, but toward the end of the year, we would say, okay, next year we're going to start growing the company. And then we go back to work.
Right.
Classic business school, baker working in the bake shop, not on the bake shop. And but we were happy. And the revenue of the company, well, I don't know how many, I don't have the kind of memory that Bob has, but there were probably 15 of us at that point in 2000. So we had added maybe like about one person a year.
Yeah.
And the revenues were $5 million. There's no profits at $5 million at a New York City. We've got big boy overhead. And but we took our fees out. We made a living, but we were happy. We liked doing what we were doing. We liked it a lot better when the revenues went to 57 million in 2007, like 6 years later. 9/11 was interesting. Everyone thought the world was over. Bob's wife was really bumming out, and just like they were talking about moving to LA to be closer to his brother. And he said, "I'm done. I'm leaving." And I'm thinking to myself, my grass is greener job was always going back to wrestle, and maybe I was going to be Steve Ward's assistant wrestling coach at my high school. And that wouldn't have been a bad thing at all. But 50 days after 9/11, Bob walks in and he goes, "I'm not moving." I'm like, I know you're not moving. And
He said that 3 days after.
3 days later, he had settled down. We had all settled down. And then 2 or 3 months after 9/11 hit, of course, we all went through a journey. Everyone has their 9/11 story or tragedy or, whatever. But interest rates tank. And like no one would have predicted. And the market skyrockets. So for the 6 years between 01 and 07, it just, the values exploded. And the company exploded because we started doing stuff. We said, well, if we're going to really grow, I called my friend Jeff Edison, that Phillips Edison chairman. And I said, we're thinking about hiring a recruiter. And but we're debating it because it's overhead. And he said, answer a question. Are you the best recruiter in New York City? I'm like, I'm not. He goes, well, I think we just answered the question. Get out there. And if you're going to hire a recruiter, you're going to hire en masse. You're going to need training because you want consistent client experience, right? So we hire a training director. And then I'm doing the books. I'm balancing the checkbook on the dining room table on Sunday afternoons instead of playing with the kids, just criminal. So we got a controller, and I'm sure we made a boatload of mistakes from 2000 to 2007, but they were all covered over by great success and growth. And when you're making $57 million in a services business, you are making money.
Yeah. That's the happy place.
Yeah, well, pretty happy.
Yeah. That's very encouraging to hear. The 12 years in. So 12 years in, right, to what we perceive as, Massey is the shining star of our business.
Well, it's encouraging, but are you going to be that same cliche? Are you going to, people don't like hearing this. We were not good strategic planners. And I say that in some of our management teams that don't admit that, but we weren't. It was the truth. We were not strategic. We did not have a strategic plan.
That surprised me because it's like you're someone who enjoys strategy and growing a business.
Well, we learned how important it was and how meaningful it could be and what you could accomplish.
Yeah.
Because the revenue ultimately pre-sale ended up very close to $100 million. And that's like in New York was still a popsicle stand at that size, but that was a good business. Right? So annual revenues, but that I think was a byproduct of the management team becoming very good at strategic planning. And strategic planning is, what's your passion? How are you going to change the world? What are you doing? And we thought a lot about that. And then what is your mission? Mission's code for what's it look like in 5 years? What's the picture of where you're going? So, yeah.
I think with the mission, you have the benefit of having done this once before, where we are where we are today, new team, new faces, new management team around you. Do you feel like you're still finding your cruising altitude, or do you feel like that
startup was very different than Massey because Massey was plodding and over a period of years, and there was never think if we had decided the first or second year of Massey that we were wanting to drive to $100 million in revenue. And what did that look like? And what do we have to put in place to get there? We did not do that before. So this has been a completely new experience because we had the picture. And obviously the vision for this company is that it's much bigger than that. It's more of a regional company. We want to be in Miami. It's the 6th borough. We like Chicago because it's the second biggest market. Lots of stuff that looks like the stuff that we sell out there. So we have a very different picture of a small, maybe go public $200 or $300 million company in our mind. So that was not the experience of Massey. We ended up there, and there was a lot of planning for the latter half of the company's life, but this has been a different experience in that way.
Something me and Brian wanted to touch on was how the brokerage business has changed. Like, how has it changed from the 80s and the 90s? And how do you think it's going to change in the next 10, 20 years? We talk about social media. That's kind of an important concept now as well.
Well, the core of Massey was the core of B6, which is territories and sharing splits so that we're not negotiating and being frustrated with each other. But another thing was that we fed data to the mothership because we had an army out there. And then we turned around and tabulated that data, reported back to the world, gave it away to the clients, gave it to our competitors. But it made us the trusted authority about a market we had a very large market share in, which is like a double moat around your business. Hard to assail it. People would occasionally try, but so daunting. And we knew there'd be Reonomy and Reology and RCA and all these companies who would just sell this stuff for relatively cheap, which is what's happening now. So that, data is now not that big of an advantage, but where we talk with you guys about how we want to change the world, which is let's accelerate this business. And a lot of people are talking about this now, but we're poised to do it. Let's accelerate the sale process. Let's accelerate due diligence. Let's accelerate the contract process. It's so arcane, and we're passionate about it, and we're singularly focused on it. Like, I don't think a competitor who's an asset management company is going to put the resources and the effort into doing that. And even though we haven't gotten moving with this yet, the debt business is it's the other conversation. We're out looking for debt brokers again because we think that that's the perfect partner for you all. We had that at Massey a little bit. And then, Cushman de-emphasized it because they were selling their own business shortly after buying ours, which I completely get. But that is a very big business. It's a bigger dollar velocity business than sales. There's 9,000 debt trades in New York City as opposed to 3,000. So I tell this to everyone, including our competitors, but I have immense faith in you guys, and I have faith in us that we're going to pursue these things that will be the next, we'll look back and say, change the world a little bit, and obviously we're community minded and we're involved with not-for-profits that are changing the world in a more social way. And that's important, but you got to be changing the world. And if you're at a company and they're not talking about how they're changing the world and changing their niche or changing their industry, I think it's time to go, think about it. You probably need to be at a place that's more exciting and dynamic.
Obviously, I'm biased, but I love the territory system. I think it's so great 'cause it gives you so much confidence when you go into pitch that that market better than anyone else, and that confidence will breathe through into the pitch and the delivery. I just think it's got to be so hyper-focused in that local market, which the foundation of B6 fit.
You got to bring something to the table.
Yeah, I mean, add value in some sort of way, right?
Yeah, and you're becoming a member of your community too. You're the Brit from the Bronx.
Hey, you got it there. I heard it from Paul Massey.
Yeah, I hear it all the time now. Is you're a brand. So I think absolutely territory system. And you know what? I'll just taunt our competitors. They don't really have it. We have it, and the lines are black and white. And if you really love that thing, you know where to come.
So, it's just talking to you here when we're like this and we're just hanging out. It strikes me that you just have big goals, right? Small goals don't really excite you. You say things like change the world. I mean, that's not something you hear from everybody, right? I mean, but I think that's really what strikes a chord in our sales meetings. I think you should do this more, by the way. I think you should talk at the start of the sales meeting, because sometimes, especially at the director level, which Mitch and I are, we're just battling every day with motivation, with sellers who don't necessarily believe that we're given the right instruction, or with buyers who don't think it's a good time to buy. And I just think when you're on the ground like that, like, we just get so bombarded from all sides, and I think it's very easy to get disillusioned. And one thing I think that when you're at the top, and I mean from like a management perspective, it's extremely powerful to hear clear directions of how to move forward. And anytime you talk at our sales meeting, where you actually, you know, where you say, we've been here before, this is what we did, this is where I think we should go, everyone comes out of that sales meeting feeling like, let me on that phone. We're going to do something.
I have a CEO coach. She was all over me about this week. So this Tuesday, I'm sharing my pipeline with the whole company, from what's sold to what's under contract to what's listed to what's on my radar to how many pitches I've done this year. I'm going to literally hand it out and go through what's, not to talk about me or to talk about my pipeline necessarily, what's the thought process of a pipeline. So that's my first. Brian, I really appreciate you pushing me on this, because I think I take for granted that you guys are in my head, you know what I'm thinking. But I would love you to say, hey, talk about this next week, talk about this next thing next week, just feed it to me. That'll help me. And that once I get going, you'll be sick of me.
Yeah, and it's stuff like you just said, you probably take it for granted that it's in your head. But I think hearing it as somebody who, I don't react well to people telling me exactly what to do.
No.
But I react well to people telling me, follow me, this is what's worked, try it your own way. I'm sure you'll make sense of it.
I'm big on try it your own way. I don't think, first of all, people resist authority naturally, not competitors.
Probably why we're in this, right? You're probably the same, Mitch, right?
I mean, you guys have two real personalities that are very independent, right?
I would say hard to manage though as well. I mean, we had Corey on, and
yeah,
it's just like,
that's natural.
He's had run-ins with both of us, and
we've loved Corey.
He has to take us aside, but in fairness to Corey, he recognizes that. And I think we recognize that he's a point then, right? Because we're looking solely at our business. How do I grow revenue for individually? And ultimately, he's looking at it, how does that feed into the company? So everyone has their own, everyone has to answer to somebody. I think for us, it's just like, we're just like, we want to make deals. We want to do deals. But you have to control that aggression. And I think Corey's done a good job at being a conduit between us, you.
Yeah. Teresa Easler, my CEO coach, is also, he's got, maybe be surprised to hear this, but she's coaching Corey. He's reporting into her about me, but she's got her hooks in him too.
That makes sense.
And just, yes, she says everyone hates authority, but they all love success.
Right.
So that's interesting. That's the rub, right? You're going to hear from him, and half the time you're going to be like, I mean, he's on me. Like, I don't welcome it all the time. Yeah. But I know he's going to say a few things that are seeds of improving me and pushing me. He's coaching me.
I feel like your team are all over you, right? You've hired some new people, but
we've totally reconstructed.
I've heard you reporting to them. You see, I've made my calls today. I've done this. I hear you like almost saying like, am I good? Have I been good today?
Well, Corey reported to Teresa that he's nervous that I'm going to spend Fridays on the vineyard this summer. And
which is a good story about this.
Last summer, I told them, the whole management team, that I would not be on the vineyard every Friday. And guess what? I lied. I was on the vineyard every Friday.
Tell them about, so today is Saturday. Tell them about yesterday, Mitch. You were here.
I was here, yeah. And we were planning set up. But the day yesterday, but Paul was still going on the phone at 5 o'clock. So it was very encouraging to see. And that really does an impact. I've seen Bobby on the way out of the office. He's like, Paul's really fired up today. It's like, does make you feel good.
So I've heard this from 3 guys in the office, that Paul was here at 5 p.m. yesterday on Friday. As someone who wasn't here at 5 p.m. on a Friday, I'm like, well, where was it? If Paul Massey, I know, not Paul Massey, anyone else, right? Bob Knackle, whoever you want to say, if they're here at 5 p.m. on a Friday, and, Paul, you could be anywhere in the world, let's call a spade, but if you're here at our office, in your desk, and you're on the phone, and you're talking shop, it's like, what am I doing?
see, that's impactful on me to know and hear that. And I'm sure everyone in the audience is like, of course, you dummy. What do you think? You need to lead by example. So Teresa says to me, we're going to play a new game this summer. And I have to admit to you, I'm a little spoiled. I much prefer to be in the golf course with my buddies or with some of you on a
Well, you're a human being, right? Yeah.
But she said, isn't it going to be a new game? You're going to have to make your calls Monday through Thursday. And it's substantial. I'm prospecting for banks. I'm prospecting for new clients. I'm talking to old clients. I'm recruiting. It's a challenge to get the appropriate number of calls done because you're also got incoming.
Yes.
You've got to be hyper disciplined to get those calls done. And she said, tell Corey that you'll be on your way to the vineyard Thursday night only if you've made your calls. And Corey's attitude, I told him that the other day. He's like, I don't believe it. I think you're just going to do whatever you want and you're not going to make the calls. Well, I'm on record right now, buddies. I'm going to make my call and then I'm going to be out of here.
Yeah. So you've done a really good job, if I may say so. I've been up to hang out with your family. I've spent time with you personally. You've done a really good job at balancing family life with business. And I know from talking to you that wasn't always the way. And I know that, that's something that you've probably come to appreciate more now, just seeing how great your family has turned out and, kids doing well. You've, Bodie, your grandchild, I know you're super proud of and you're spending a lot of time with now. But for guys like Mitch and I or girls who are out there and they're at the stage of early family life, commission business, right? So no salaries coming in, everyone's at home depending on you. What was that like? I guess that you seem like you're able to enjoy family life now, which is great, but was it always that way?
Well, everyone's heard the Pancake Wednesday story, or a lot of people have.
That's right, yeah.
But I found myself working. I probably liked work a lot and maybe to a fault. And I'm not saying you're my kids. Yeah, you probably kind of are now at this point, but you're like my little brothers.
We call you the Godfather.
Yeah. Well, I probably overdid it, loving work a little bit. And my kids will be, you were okay, Dad, but I found myself coming home Fridays and they'd be frantic and Gretchen would be like, nice to see you. And so I made this thing where it sounds mercenary, but I stay home on Wednesdays, make them pancakes, walk them to school, say hi to the teacher. The teacher would just talk to Gretchen if there was anything we really needed to hear. But it was just a whole routine. Then would come home one night a week, middle of the week, no matter what. So then you get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, family dinner, midweek dinner, four dinners a week, and you bust that up with the breakfast thing. And that kind of did the trick. That maybe not perfect in any regard, but it kind of just made me more present. And but I think I struggled with that. I think the Bodie thing, the grandkid thing is, Gretchen's insanely good at this, but she's in the kids' lives day to day. She talks to them most days. She knows what's going on with them day to day. I think they probably wish I would do a little more of that because it would send a message, but they know I care deeply about them. But I'm not going to say this is easy, guys. And I used to tell the kids, look, we're on these great vacations and we spent a lot of time at the beach in the summer, and they're like, well, you're on the phone the whole time. So, it's a blessing if you love your job, but you got to watch that. Right? Yeah. You all know what I'm talking about.
I'll finish that story. You used to tell your kids that, yeah, but the view is pretty good, right?
Exactly. Well, I benefited from being away with them because your blood pressure goes down a couple of clicks.
Totally.
And, we like to ski, and that's a great family activity. We our kids never went to summer camp. They always went to, East Chop boot camp. And, it was pretty good.
It was,
and I shared that. It probably frustrating for Gretchen over the years, but I used to mesh it all together and have, Rob Shapiro would be throwing a case of beer under the bush for PJ when he was underage drinking, and Guthrie was called Uncle Guthrie, and all, they lived they spent some really good quality time with the entire family.
Yeah.
It was fun, and I love doing that with everyone at B6 too. Like the weekend with your family was fantastic recently, and I don't know, just I think you can do it all.
And it's memorable, and I know Mitch would agree, but at that time when you invited us up, it was the depths of COVID, and you called me and you were saying, hey, what's up? You were checking in. And I think it was just like, listen, this is tough, Paul. Like, I was at JJ at the time. He was probably 1.5. We hadn't been out of the house in a while. And it wasn't even about that. You were calling me about something else, and we hung up. It was about a deal. We hung up, and you called back 5 minutes later. And you said, Brian, by the way, when was the last time you had a holiday? Or when was the last time you've been on vacation? And I laughed, and I was like, probably 2 years, whatever. Come up to the vineyard, Memorial Day weekend. Bring whoever you want. Bring the whole family. We'd love to have you. We have it penciled in. And I think that really, I said it to the wife then when we got off the phone, Aisling, let's go to Martha's Vineyard for Memorial Day weekend. Like, Paul has this house, like, up there. Like, it's amazing. Let's do it. And she was pumped, and everyone was pumped. And that really gave us, like, a kick and a pick-me-up for a few weeks. And then, like, went back. It was like, we just get stuff done before we go. We went up there. Your family took us. It was like you were like our family. It was like cousins, or you took care of JJ. I feel terrible. Paul Massey's my babysitter here for this guy's. And but it was just like we hung out, we did everything, and your family was amazing, and I feel like we have a connection to them now, and they know our family. But as a leader, and trying to tie it back into the whole leadership thing, you could have been like, Brian, you need to up the ante, you need to do more of what you're doing, but you hung up and you thought about it, and maybe you didn't. I don't know. I'm just thinking in my mind what you did, and you said maybe that guy, just. Maybe there's stuff going on there that he just needs a break from what he's doing every day. And you brought me up, and I came back, and I'm like, this is like, I want to do what Paul has done. I know you're not perfect, and when we were up there, it was interesting to see you're just a dad up there, right? Your kids give you shit the same way we all give our dad, they were like, so it was funny, I was like, that's Paul Massey you're talking to. But like, to them, he's just dad, and he's just there he's making pancakes, and he's hanging out, and he's doing the same thing we always do. But it struck me that, normal people can do exceptional things, and there's really no limit. Like, seeing where you live up there, and knowing where you come from, and knowing what you do every day, there's no ceiling on what we can do.
I think you can do it all. I think you can do it all. I think you can have a family. I think you can have a great career. And we've talked about it a little bit, but we have a million hobbies too, right? Million hobbies. But, Gretchen has a support system is fantastic, right? And it definitely is a team thing. And you wrestle with always getting the team right. I think we all have. But, she was, those kids, I already said she's tight with them, but they have good manners, they're practical, and it wasn't me they were hanging out with getting those cues. And then she loves all you guys. I mean, she ends up walking out in the morning at the beach house, and John Hageman's, asleep, knocked out on the couch from a big night out. And she laughs and, okay, let's make breakfast.
Yeah.
So she loved everyone who we've been associated with, and that really helps.
We had a great time up there with Bobby and Adrian. I was lucky enough to drive Paul's boat across from Nantucket, feeling like the king of the world.
But you were a natural, Mitch. Driving a boat is not like driving a car. It takes a little getting used to the feathering, and I was like very impressed. You got
it's a bit choppy out there. I think, and the way that I hope Adrian doesn't mind me saying, he was threw up overboard. Nearly had a man overboard.
Grab him by his belt, make sure we didn't lose him.
Adrian,
shum the water.
Adrian's our chief operations officer.
I would have jump on Monday.
He's supposed to have a better stomach than that.
That was rough. It was probably a combo of the evening before.
Yeah, well, that's true, right? That is true. So, So life is different now than it was back then, right? You've added things to it. Things have changed. Priorities have changed from when you started B6. I mean, compared to now, when you used to be with Massey. There's a big contrast there, and I'm wondering, in terms of leadership, what hasn't changed?
But we talked about it a little bit. The first thing that comes to mind is, servant leadership. That really works. That I truly believe, and you guys know it, that I work for you. Like you asked me to go on a pitch, I'm happy.
Yeah.
And, you and I wrestling with some of our multifamily clients lately, had a blast for me.
That's where you come into your own, I feel like. You can see it, that this is like the problem solving, and it's probably like the jiu-jitsu as well. There's more problem solving in it, I think, than that's the aspect that.
You know what's satisfying lately? They listen, but you got to watch yourself. You can't, you can only be the trusted advisor. You can't be making decisions for them, which sometimes I get impatient and I want to just, look, client, you're doing that.
Because you know the answer, you know the right answer.
Well, yeah, you know the right answer, and they know you know the right answer. But they're human. They're ready to hear it when they're ready to hear it. Like Brian and I got on a phone call with a client we really like, who were really split about whether they were selling a multifamily building, and they had come to Jesus themselves about that. The one half wanted to buy the other half out, but then the half that wanted to buy the group out, like the one that wanted to hang around, realized how much CapEx the building was going to need, and they looked themselves in the mirror, and they get Ryan and I on a call 2 days ago and said, we're all out. And they were still quibbling with each other about why and when and how, but they had made a definitive, they had a unanimous vote to pull the ripcord, and they surprised us a little bit about how quickly they got there, I think.
I agree, and probably mirroring, right? I think in that aspect, the same way you can't tell me or Mitch the Bronx is great or Upper Manhattan is great, you can't tell somebody that this is a great time to sell or this is the perfect time to sell, right? It's more of, like you always say, non-economic reasons, stuff going on in their lives that makes it a good time to sell, but it's not necessarily about looking at it. I just feel like people are paranoid about, is this the perfect time to sell?
I was coming back from the gym with Italo, from the jiu-jitsu gym. I'm in the cab, and the one who is the least interested in selling, I think she likes the owning and likes the ride, she says to me, Paul, do you think we're selling at the bottom of the market? And that's like...
It's a loaded question.
And of course I do. And she knows it, and so did I. So what I said to her, I thought was artful in that, look, it's not helpful because there's a majority of the group who have decided to sell. So if I said something like that, it'd be inflammatory to them. But I don't blame them for selling because they're at that point in their lives where they've just made a decision. And who the hell knows if it's really the bottom? It probably is, and the property's probably worth more, and it makes no economic sense to sell with all the taxes. But you know what? Every family gets to that point, and to rub that in or to state the obvious to them, which she was trying to get me to do, and she meant well. I didn't take it the wrong way, but she asked a very intelligent, pointed question. And
we spoke about this at the sales meeting of the week, but in terms of like the wording, exact words that you use to a client is so important, right? And I think that's a good example.
I'll write a letter 10 times.
Yeah.
If it's a letter that I care about, I'll write it 10 times, because I think, Frank Luntz,
the political.
Yeah, he's a political consultant.
He does the polling. He's a pollster, right?
Yeah. He's a consultant more. He wrote a book called Words Work. He's wrote many books, but that's a fun book to read about it if you're at all interested in the power of the individual word.
I want to write this down. 1 second.
Word.
Checking our show notes.
Words that work.
Words that work.
It's really good.
But they do.
You know, I want to segue for just 1 second. You talked about Italo, the Brazilian jiu-jitsu expert that is kicking around here.
Yeah.
You know why I love that kid? Because he not only because he's a great coach for me, And he doesn't most of the time he doesn't hurt me.
Oh, he's a good kid.
He came up to me yesterday, and you guys will kind of relate to this because you know him. He said, "I need a language coach, don't I? I need a speech coach." And there have been people who have worked in our company, and we embrace immigrants. So we've got people from a lot of different countries, which is what I love.
You're going to love this podcast, man.
Yeah, no, I do love it. I mean, it's highlighting our embracing immigrants and being proudly the chairman of the board of the Tenement Museum for years. It's the whole New York thing. I'm just all into it. And we've had people who have not had English as their first language who struggle with it. And they resisted my coaching, which was get someone who can help you with your diction, get someone who can help you with your grammar. You know, there are people who are passionate about this, and I'm going to send Italo to one of them, but he needs it and he knows it, and it was his idea.
But that's why it'll work. It was his idea.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
You telling him, hey, I think you should improve on this or do this. Builds resentment.
I didn't bring it up.
Yeah.
He heard about words that work in the sales meeting, and it wasn't 24 hours before he told me he was going to embrace coaching. And it is something that he'll find improves him a lot, I think. And you guys know that. But he's a sponge. He's a sponge. He doesn't want to be a professional jiu-jitsu coach for his whole life, I think. I mean, he's really good and could do anything he wants. But he said he's made a decision that probably something like this is for him, and who knows exactly what it will be. But, you know, when you see a young guy like that, if I have to hear one more time from him, New York City is the greatest city in the world.
Just had to take a bathroom break. The Irishman had too much to drink. So following up on Italo and questions are.
We're talking about his seeking diction classes and grammar classes.
But he came to you about that. It's not something you recommended.
No,
necessarily.
So it made my day. It made my day because you know he's going to be a success.
Yeah, you've seen that. You've seen that movie before.
And I've seen the other side of it too, where you resist and you don't know. Look, you can't. A thing is, you can't fix what you're weak at, right? You can't. You have to embrace what you're good at. People make that mistake. This is the year I'm going to fix the thing I don't like. Forget it. Get someone else to do it for you. Hire somebody.
Right.
But fundamental behavioral stuff, like your diction, you can get better at it, just like you can working out at the jiu-jitsu gym. So whatever he wants to be strong at is going to be significantly helped by his ability to speak in a clear, way. I mean, he grew up knowing no English for most of his life. Yeah.
It sounds like you hired for attitude rather than what college they went to or whether.
Well, I think I used to fool myself and say resumes don't matter. That was just stubborn. But James Nelson, right? He came to us, and he seemed like a winner, and he seemed like a hard charger. So I didn't pay much attention to his resume. But if you really look at his resume, stand-up comic, Division I swimming, champion, records at Colgate, president of his fraternity. I mean, if you really dissect it, I went back and looked at his resume. From kindergarten, the guy was a winner, right? And he was my poster child for, okay, resumes matter. Or if you don't see it on the resume, dig into the person's background with them and see if it's there. But if there's no meat there, that doesn't mean they're a bad person. It just means they're probably not going to love this business. And there's a better career for them that requires less, full-on aggressive competitiveness. We think a salesman is a superior being, or we act like it is. And then they're not really, but they're what we need.
Yeah, we were talking about introverts the other day.
Right.
What do you think a salesman, and that a salesman could be an introverted or extroverted? Do you think that they have to be?
We were talking about it in the sense that traditionally you would have thought an extrovert, you know, someone who's high energy, loves people, that's your best salesman. But we're not selling, you know, refrigerators or, you know, stereo systems. We're selling buildings. So really when it comes down, I think anyway, and curious to hear what you think, it's not so much your sales skills. I think brokerage skills are different to sales skills. And being able to curry favor with both sides, gauge motivation, and really, and I think you're an example of this, be an expert in a specific area. That's what people buy into when it's high stakes. You know, it's not about like a one-off purchase at Home Depot where you're a good salesman and you move the product. Maybe being an extrovert is good that in that sense, but introverts, I feel like they're the underrated people in this business that probably.
Well, there's a prejudice of people think that a salesman's the person who walks in the room and lights it up, right? That is not the case. We had a big enough sales organization with our first business, and now with this one, where you've got all kinds of personalities. Like the thing I mentioned about how I thought it was weird that I like to read, because that wasn't in the playbook of what a salesman's like. Shouldn't I have been out networking instead of snuggling up with my book at the little French bistro up the hill, you know, when the kids were up at the beach? But I think there are all kinds of personalities. So one thing in the recruiting department that we've always wrestled with was the recruiting director coming and saying, I really like this person. You really like them? You mean they had a nice personality? Yeah. That's like the frosting on the cake. That's not how you should be making your decision. Where's the excellence? Where's the leadership? Where's the discipline pipeline? You know, where's the being involved in things that require, you know, when I'm recruiting people, I tell them it's the best job on the planet. There's immense freedom. You're not a baby doctor where, you know, or an OBGYN where if you're not there, someone's is going to be in trouble, where, you know, there's a lot of vacation time, a lot of freedom. You're not dependent on one client. You've got 20 clients. So you know, there's just so many good things about our business. But the thing is, it's just, I then go to the truth. The part of the other truth is it's just pipeline management, not sexy. Like, how do you stuff the pipeline? How do you make sure you're at the table to present when people are going to transact? So that's market. How are you developing your market presence? How are you winning the business? How are you executing the business? How are you closing the business? And you're doing 10 or 15 of those at a time. That's just pipeline management. There's nothing fun about that. It's a grind, and you've got to have systems in place. And it's going to be fun talking about my pipeline on Tuesday, because once people see that and see the way I think about it, they're going to realize this is a logistics operation. It's not that sexy. But everything that we get that goes with it, look, let's admit it, we're overpaid, right? We're not that the client should start negotiating our commission.
Hey, Kaz, can we edit that part out?
We're trying to increase our fees with inflation.
No, but I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
Because
we're not curing any major
every
disease.
sale ends up being minimum wage. You just have a whole bunch of minimum wage.
Exactly, and you do a volume business.
Yeah, but anyway, the bottom line is, our business there's nothing better in the world than our business, but it's not sexy. No. So therefore, you can be a bookish, introverted person and crush it. And the clients, you know, they didn't expect the lampshade guy all the time. They like it, but the lampshade guys can be a little superficial sometimes, right?
Yeah.
What I've learned, I was used to be a bit self-conscious about that I need to be extroverted, but I think you've learned that.
Well, I'm talking right at you, Mitch. I know.
I think that you can just learn to be yourself, right? The authenticity people appreciate.
That's 100%
completely.
Yeah.
And it also reminds me when I first interviewed with you and several other people in New York, and I was like, Paul, how can I make money? How do I become successful? Become disciplined. 5 other people said the same thing. Unless you've got a book and read, how do you become disciplined? And I just ingrain that in your brain. And competitive drive is obviously another important one in hiring. I feel like you can't be successful if you're not competitive drive. Like, and that's just a given, right? And otherwise, it's just too hard not to do things if you don't have competition.
That's why you're in the seat you're in, I guess, right? Because
One of the things that pops into my mind is how do you manage your team? Because that's how you lever yourself up to success. That's a big thing. Well, it just was, I think, the next thing to talk about. There are unfortunately too many people out in New York City right now in our industry who will tell you that I was a terrible manager at the beginning. Terrible.
Mate, that's surprised.
No. Go back to anyone at MK and say, what was he like in the early days? And their eyes will roll. It's not learned. It's learned. It's not innate.
Yeah.
You really, there are principles of management that are just like fundamental things that you're not born with. So if you're wrestling with your team, and we all do.
100%.
We're learning that, right?
Yeah, no.
I think it's a little unfair that you guys get labeled with, and I'm talking to Corey now, I hope he's tuned in, I think he probably that they're not a good manager. The average ape on the street, the salesman, is innately not a good manager. And like Bob Knackel, he doesn't even like managing, but he runs a damn good team, right? And his team loves him, right? So it's all learned. It's all learned. My dad hated his job. God bless him. My grandfather was a wonderful man, but he was a tyrant. And my father never liked his job. And it's funny, I used to come home and I had some really shitty summer jobs, like washing dishes in a Woolworths. I don't know if you know what even that store is. But
I stayed at like an old pharmacy where you could get a burger, a cheeseburger.
Exactly.
Right.
There was a luncheon counter. I
lunch
was washing
counter.
dishes. That was my first job. My parents were horrified. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm making money. And so I would come home complaining about the manager or my job. And my father would say, look, what you need to know is most people hate their job and you just need to suck it up. Now, that's a terrible lesson, right?
What year was that?
That was probably when I was 15. It's 1975.
So your dad was probably a guy from the Greatest Generation, right?
Yeah.
So they were like,
Yeah.
you have no idea what you're talking about. Like,
Right.
we went to Europe and like fought the Nazis and
Yeah.
whatever you're dealing with. But I do think that gets lost, and even today I see it, because that spills on to the next generation, and you see it with your own kids. I never had any difficulties like that. I was brought up,
Like voice.
I worked obviously, but everything was provided for me, and I was given whatever I needed to succeed.
My point was going towards, we weren't sitting around the dinner table talking about business.
Yeah.
He did not do that.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up, postscript, he ended up having a 10-year run at another publishing company, a newspaper publishing. My grandfather owned a small town newspaper that was a small business. My dad ended up happy. He ended up with a happy career, and it made him much more interesting and fun. But I had no knowledge. I thought it was greed is good, Wall Street. I thought, Michael Douglas was my model for what business.
Gordon Gekko.
Oh my God. I was so bad and had no sensitivity about what motivated people. Thought fear and yelling might do the trick. Not good. So when you guys are working on your team, it's just natural that you're going to need some coaching on that.
100%. One phrase you used on me when I asked you for advice on how to manage some things, maybe it was even when I was coming to you and I was like, does this business even work? Does this even work? And you said, I think you sat back and you said, and you were very deliberate about the phrase, because I know you're deliberate about words, and you said, are you perfectly happy doing this job? And that was, I think it was a Jedi mind trick, right? Because when you say, are you perfectly happy, right, you leave it wide open for, Well, I think I said yes, straight up, yes.
Believe me, I was looking for that.
And
because that's your foundation.
I think I automatically said yes. Because
I think you genuinely said yeah. I think you meant it. I needed to know that.
No, but I when I said
I would have coached.
You would have teased it out.
No, I would have coached you.
But when I say automatically, I mean like it was the genuine answer.
It's in your heart.
Are you do you want to go do something else? You were basically saying. I was like, no.
Well, so then from then we can
work.
Conversation.
You can work with this guy or girl.
Yeah. If that fundamental thing isn't there, again, doesn't make you bad. But the minute you said yes unhesitatingly, and you can tell what unhesitatingly is.
You know, right?
Well, people don't, when people answer a question honestly, that's a serious question, they do not hesitate if they're giving you the right answer. If you hesitated even for a half a second, I would have taken that as a no, and I would have loved you and
Let's figure out what is for you.
and
Yeah.
set you on your way.
Yeah.
And with all my help and all my recommendations. But you were in, and then I'm like, okay, I basically said some version of, we can fix anything, Brian.
Exactly. There was nothing then, but you gave me, and I keep trying to tie this into leadership, but you gave me the permission to say, like, I'm not. And I think by having that, then I was able to say, like, if there was any doubt, like, maybe this is the time to say it, but it just came out, yes. Like, obviously, I want to do this.
Well, the minute I said perfectly, and it was very non-rushed, the way I use that exact word,
Yeah.
it gave you plenty of time to think.
Give me plenty.
It didn't seem weird,
Right.
but are you perfectly happy
Yeah.
that you had plenty of time to think?
Yeah.
So my deliberateness was probably just making sure I got the honest answer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, when
It's a real word that
you made it up, but that's okay. You can do that. But one thing then that I took from that was, you can, to be a leader and to inspire loyalty, you have to go to them. Like,
be direct.
you
To their
can't
soul. You have to go
to their soul. And you can't say what you want or what you expect them to say.
No, that's the frustrating thing. You can't change.
And whenever I said, or whatever a person says to you, they say, and you put time into me, you put work into me. I know you don't see it like that, but I'm just saying, from my perspective, that's what I saw. Like, this man gave me a chance, and I owe him loyalty. So you would feel bad, but you gave us permission to say, listen, I want out. And you made it clear at the time, I don't know how you did, but you did it at different times, that, like, if you want to leave here, come to me first and I'll help you. I'll help you do that, and I'll help you find a place that you're happy. So once you take all that, as a young broker, I think once you take all of that out of the equation of, how am I going to handle Paul? How am I going to handle bosses here? How am I going to get out? You start, like, building up stress for yourself. And once that's removed, it's like, well, actually, what do I want? Like, am I happy here? And if Paul can help me, maybe he will, and I'll find something better than this. But if I want this, maybe Paul can help me too. So, and I think as a leader and, captain or CEO, whatever you want to call it, I think, and I'm not saying you think this, I think as someone who's below and looking up, that's important to me. That this guy has seen me, he understands me, he wants to hear what I think, and he'll direct me in the best way that he can. And I'll throw that in with whatever other mentorship I'm getting.
Well, that gets back to our earlier conversation about it needs to be your idea. Not your idea, that's the wrong way to say it. It needs to be in you.
Mm-hmm. Your mission.
Yeah.
Talking about mentorship, you've been a great mentor to a lot of us. Who's been your mentor? Who have you sort of helped you along the way, and who have you looked up to?
Role models, like I talked about, my high school wrestling coach, Steve Ward. Another big brother that I never had was a guy named Tony Jarvis, who was the headmaster of my high school, which was an old Latin school in Boston. And Tony was a legendary educator, just an incredible guy. And he made Roxbury Latin in the modern day, what it is, which is a great school. It's a feeder school to all the IBs, and just a wonderful, diverse place too. It's got a big endowment, so it can admit knee blind. So it was a melting pot school, which we needed in Boston at that time. But Tony was an amazing person, dedicated person. He loved us. He managed us and loved us, and
that set you up well for life in New York with all the different diversity and different types of people.
Boston was the city of brotherly hate back then, the early 70s.
I never heard that one.
No, it was. There was federally mandated busing. Every school was a one-way street. Every town was a one-way street. So The federal government, it was so bad that the federal government got involved and force people to be bussed into the middle of neighborhoods where, you know, there were, you know, it was, and there were riots, there were murders, there were, you know, one of my classmates, young black guy, was shot at on the way up the hill because we lived in a neighborhood that was pure Irish Catholic, white, working class. The school was, it was very, very bad. But there were 39 boys in my high school class, it's small, but it was a very diverse group. And if you couldn't, everyone brought their biases to the party, right? I mean, everyone, not just me, who grew up in a very Irish Catholic neighborhood where there were no black people, there were no Jewish people.
Very homogenous.
It was, and they were racist. A lot of people were racist. Like, you know, I was asked many times, why do you go to school with blacks and Jews? And those weren't the expressions they were using, by the way.
Sarah?
Yeah. And my answer was always, because you're an asshole, you know? But boy, did I benefit from that. And, you know, especially coming to New York City, which is the ultimate melting pot. Running for office in New York was fantastic because you've got to meet with all the communities. I used to think I was Mr. New York from Massey days, where we were really in every market, but we weren't in every market as a community leader or as a potential leader of the city. But when you start to be in those places, and there are wildly diverse elements and backgrounds in New York, they all have their own distinct concerns and focuses that are all different. But they have this love of, I'm part of the fabric. There's so much New York City pride out there in almost every neighborhood that it was heartwarming to see that. You know, there are all these people. I mean, like, the Orthodox Jewish community is famous for being kind of a little bit, you know, introverted, like
insular,
whatever the right word is.
Right.
Like you were talking about, maybe you are a little bit too Mitch, or, you know, I think I am a little bit. But, you know, all these groups love being part of New York at the same time.
That's the key.
Yeah. So Boston was like that.
Mm-hmm.
And but I really benefited but there were a lot of things. Tony Jarvis as a leader was the most disciplined person I've ever met in my life. Wildly disciplined. Worked at it. He probably worked 28 hours a day. I don't know how he did what he did. And he's famous. He's like, ask anyone in the private independent school world in the country, and they know who he is. And I was one of his first kids.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think those people, those two particularly, were my big ones. It's great.
To hang out there, since you brought up political stuff, we were talking before we went live on air about, you know, meeting in person and the importance of body language. And if there's ever an opportunity to meet someone in person, I know you take that opportunity. You jump on a plane, you go on the train, whatever it takes, you're there. Do you think if we got everyone in Albany, the powers that be, and say, you know, the tenant groups who are well-meaning and really want meaningful change for tenants, to avoid going back to the days where tenants were displaced, and to also allow real estate investors or landlords to, you know, for it to be a profitable business, do you think there's a benefit to getting everybody in the one room together? And would you like to be in that room?
100%. Maybe that's a role that our company can embrace, because you know that. So one of the things I've learned about biases and prejudice is it's just that I think it's fundamentally a lack of familiarity. Fundamental.
100%.
Yeah. If you spend time with people, even if they're diverse from you, you're gonna warm to them. People want to love people. They want to get along fundamentally. But if they don't spend any time together, like we're a landlord and tenants groups having real conversation. I'm sorry.
Nowhere.
And that's a failing of our political leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Not a failing. It's
But we're also guilty of it.
That's an opportunity for blue.
When we promote, like Mitch and I write on LinkedIn, or we do what, even this podcast, right? We want to actually get it out there and we want tenant advocates coming on here. We want someone who grew up in a rent stabilized building that's passionate about protecting tenants. Well, I want them to come on.
You just set your agenda for the next, for one of your next podcasts. Why don't you have a community-minded landlord sit down with a community-minded tenant rep and make sure that they're polite enough so that it doesn't devolve.
And it's not a debate, right?
You know, what you think the rent guideline boards, public meetings are a place that's going to be productive?
You think that, and everybody, posturing to their base or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly.
You have Paul Massey come in here. You have, John Smith come in here that's a tenant advocate. And I guarantee we won't even talk about the rent laws. We'll talk about what makes this person a person.
Yeah, we have 3 or 4 of our clients, and they know who they are, who would be so eloquent and caring.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of our landlord clients now are wounded. They're hurt. They think that nobody likes me, no one appreciates me, but they're like, they believe that they're providing an immense service for New York, who's been in a housing shortage for years, providing quality housing. That's what they think. They don't think, I just want net income. They don't think like that. They're entitled to it, so they can think they're entitled to it, but they think they're providing a community service. So if you've got a tenant group and leader of the tenants that can understand their motivation but express rationally tenant concerns, you just hit on a massive opportunity. And you could be the facilitators of that. You can do the community a lot of good. That could light this thing up. This is a great idea.
I think it's exciting because there's
you two are great moderators because you ask good questions, but you're comfortable doing this. So this is
Thank you, Paul. Thanks, Paul. It's interesting because a landlord is perceived to be greedy if they're making money from cash flow, but like that's a service they're providing.
Well, there's 2 choices in the world. You can either have them be compensated for providing good housing and good service, or you can let the government do it, and they're going to screw it up.
Do a bad job.
So who wants to do it?
Can you spell NYC?
Right. Yeah.
And it's socially acceptable for a doctor to make a lot of money, right? Because they're providing a service in the day to.
Well, doctors should be making more money. I think they're mistreated in current society.
But it's interesting dynamic, and obviously I don't have the answers, but it'd be good.
We don't have the answers, but I think that's the whole idea, is to come on and tease it out. Like,
well, if you could have them on and have them do a chill, relax kind of brunch type thing where they're
a few drinks in the tip.
The answer to everything is alcohol.
Coming from the press.
Yeah, but I mean, think about it. If you could find 2 of them that are going to embrace, like, developing a friendship right on your show, and you get a sense that might happen because of their nature.
Yeah.
When you go out into the world and you start looking for these 2 people, on the landlord side, we can help.
Yeah, that's easy.
We know. Yeah. We know who's a passionate, caring, good person, like Paul Brusco should.
Right.
The Upper West Side landlord.
Yeah.
He's a dear friend.
Yeah.
Paul Brusco.
In it for the right reason.
Paul Brusco should get on the show with you guys and meet with a tenant advocate, and he'll have massive empathy, and there's no one better about, his dedication to providing great housing. And, he's got an excellent reputation with everybody. And he's going to be mad at me because I'm maybe half committing him, but he's the kind of person who would click.
Yeah.
Right.
I think it would be helpful for a tenant advocate, someone who has grown up on one side, the same way that we're, dealing with landlords mostly. They could see that actually this guy is a guy who has a family. He's trying to run a business. He's trying to do things the right way. The same way, because all we do is talk in silos. We talk to developers, we talk to real estate. Of course, they're going to agree with us. They're going to give us a like, a share, or whatever. But there always is genuine concerns whenever there's an upheaval like this. And we got to where we are, I think, because the small minority took advantage of loopholes that genuinely needed to be tightened up. But I still think you have, 95, 99% of landlords that are in it for the right reasons, trying to just make a living, provide good housing. The same way that you have 95% of tenants that just want a good place to live and want the opportunity to be able to raise their families in a decent living and pay the rent and do the right thing. And I think if you started talking more about the 95% than the 5% that pulls us right or left or wherever, I think
we're 85% of the world's the centrist candidate, a centrist supporter. We're all.
We can see merits in the right and the left in different arguments.
100%.
Yeah.
But I think if you look at something like this podcast as a community service, and I mean that in a real way, we've had you're going to have a bunch of people on here who are going to, what's it like to be a salesman? Maybe people directly don't care about that. Maybe they absolutely care about that. But there are so many life lessons that come out of that conversation, like the whole one that we've had today.
Yeah.
But then you get it into, landlord-tenant relations. What else is the community? What else the community is focused on? Bring people in.
Right.
The getting back to the strategic planning and how are you changing the world. This is high-level communication could be very, very useful.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think the real estate community acknowledged that post-19 laws, they maybe didn't put their voice up there enough and go up to Albany and communicate effectively.
Didn't they got caught so flat-footed it was ridiculous? Yeah. They had no.
It's the goal of the podcast.
I really think it is.
Yeah.
We're coming up in times that are very polarized.
Yep.
We come from different countries.
And we have an independent views.
We have an independent view on this. We grew up one way, but
you have a new view. You're young.
We're young, but we're also very tapped. We make how many cold calls a week, right? We're talking to owners. We're getting that information. We're hearing what it's like to operate a building. Then we're also hearing what it's like to have to be a tenant to the building or to have to operate a building. And I think we see it from every way, right? I mean, there is a way forward, like you said, the 85%, the centrist people, whoever that is, that's who we want to be talking to. How can we come together? Everyone who comes here, I'm talking as someone who came here from Ireland, Mitch is from the UK, we've got guys here from Serbia, from Kosovo, from Brazil, but we're all here because we really buy into what New York could be.
I got involved with Nelson Peltz and Joe Lieberman from Connecticut, who were advocating for a centrist party, and they're doing good work with that. But the problem politically with a centrist party is parties don't build up to strength enough to win for several election cycles, so you have to dedicate yourself to losing. So that's why a centrist party hasn't emerged.
Okay.
I think because you'd have to dedicate yourself to being ineffectual for several cycles. That's the rub.
And who wants to do that?
That makes sense. But maybe if you advocate for that as the fundamental core principle of your podcast, that you'd move it along faster.
I like it.
It makes not a good listening.
I like it. Yeah. But listen,
a lot about what people care about.
In closing, and this whole thing was about leadership. Where are you leading us? Where are we going?
We're gonna build out the company and attack the submarkets. We're going to accelerate the business. We and others, our partners in crime, our favorite attorneys, our favorite title companies, our favorite environmental companies are going to accelerate the business. We're going to build a debt business. I'm making an assumption that you guys are all into that and you're going to support it and you'll be the engine that feeds it. And we're going to have a happy life together.
Absolutely love it. And Paul Massey, personally, I think speaking for everybody, you've been somebody that has, worked with us, helped us build our business. You've been there for everything we needed. And not to make this a I Love Paul podcast, but we do love Paul. And you really are one of a kind. You've been as someone who's moved here from another country, you've been father, uncle, you know, whatever you want to call it, big brother. You've really done exactly what you said you would do, and I appreciate you, man.
I'll just say, you know how I feel about you. Appreciate it, Paul. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.